The silent crash in the valley. The wind was calm that evening. The valley was quiet as always. Tall grass danced gently, and the blue sun was setting behind the hills. Birds flew low, and the trees whispered to each other. Nothing felt strange, until the sky screamed. A fireball tore through the clouds. It wasn't a shooting star, it was something big, something heavy. It crashed beyond the hills with a sound that shook the ground. Animals ran, birds scattered, and silence fell again, even heavier than before. Villagers nearby said it was a curse. They believed the gods had thrown something down from the heavens. No one dared to go near. They locked their doors and warned their children. "Stay away from the valley," the elders whispered. "Whatever fell there is not meant for us." But Elian wasn't like the others. He was not from the village. He was a traveler, a human who lived alone in the old woods. People said he spoke to stars. They said he understood machines and silence better than most. But no one really knew him. Elian stood at the edge of the forest, staring at the smoke rising from the valley. His eyes were calm, but his heart beat faster. Not from fear, but something else. Something deeper. A calling. He packed a small bag, took some tools, and walked toward the crash site while the villagers watched from their windows. They didn't stop him. They just watched him disappear into the fog. As he walked deeper into the valley, the air changed. It smelled of metal, ash, and something old, like forgotten memories. The grass here was scorched, trees were broken like toothpicks, and in the middle of it all lay the wreck. A massive, twisted ship, black, burned, and silent. It wasn't human, not even close. Elian moved slowly, careful, alert. He didn't speak. He only listened, to the wind, the crackling fire, and the soft hum of something still alive. He climbed over broken metal and wires, moving deeper into the wreck. Then he saw it. Curled in the shadows, breathing softly, was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It was huge, long, lean, and glowing faintly. Its skin was pale, almost white, but shimmered like starlight. It had wings, though one was badly torn. Silver blood marked the ground around it. Its body was covered in scars and burns, and around its neck were chains. Elian froze. The creature stirred. It opened one glowing eye, golden, filled with pain. It saw him and tried to rise, but it failed. Its legs trembled. Its wing dragged. Still, it growled, a deep, broken sound from its throat. But Elian didn't move. He slowly raised his hands and whispered, "I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon's eye blinked once. It didn't understand the words, but it felt something in his voice. Not fear, not hate, something else. Elian stepped closer, slowly. He reached into his bag and took out a water flask. He placed it on the ground and slid it toward the creature. Then he backed away. The dragon sniffed the flask. Weak. Tired. It pushed the cap open with its snout and drank. Slowly. Carefully. Like it hadn't tasted water in days. Elian watched quietly. He noticed the wounds on its legs, the way the chains had cut deep into its skin. He saw old burn marks that looked too cruel, too deliberate. Someone hadn't just hurt this creature, they had tortured it. The dragon looked at him again. Longer this time, Elian whispered. "You're not a monster, are you?" There was no answer, just silence. But for the first time since the crash, the dragon closed its eyes, not in pain, but in something close to peace. Elian sat beside the wreck that night, not too close, not too far. He lit a small fire and wrapped himself in a blanket. The stars above were cold and bright, and in the distance the soft breathing of the dragon filled the air. No one had come for it, no rescue, no friends, not even enemies. Elian thought, maybe they gave up on it. Maybe they were afraid. Or maybe they never cared at all. But he did. And in that quiet valley, under a broken sky. Something began. Not a friendship. Not yet. Just a moment between a human who had nothing to lose and a dragon who had lost everything. And sometimes, that's enough to start a story worth remembering. He feeds the dragon that should be dead. The next morning, the valley was still. Mist rolled over the burned grass, curling around the wreck like a blanket of ghosts. Elian didn't sleep much. The fire had turned to cold ash, but he was still awake, sitting with his knees pulled close, eyes watching the creature that had nearly stopped breathing in the night. The dragon hadn't moved. Not much. It was still curled in the broken metal of the ship, chained to the wreck like some forgotten prisoner. Its pale body shimmered faintly under the early sun, but its breaths were slow, almost too slow. Elian stood and approached. He moved carefully, step by step, like someone walking through the ruins of a dream. His boots crunched soft metal and ash. In one hand he held food, some dried meat, berries, and a nutrient bar. In the other hand he carried a flask of clean water, freshly filtered from a nearby stream. He placed the food near the dragon and backed away. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, a flicker. The dragon opened one eye. Its pupils narrowed at the food. Its nostrils flared, but it didn't eat. Elian frowned. He noticed how the dragon's body shook slightly when it tried to breathe. It was in pain. More than pain, suffering, and maybe something deeper. Something inside its soul. A quiet kind of damage that even time couldn't fix. He whispered, "You have to eat. You won't survive if you don't." The dragon blinked slowly, and then it moved. Its head leaned forward, dragging the heavy chain around its neck. The metal scraped and sparked. The dragon ignored it. It sniffed the meat and took one small bite, then another. Elian almost smiled, but he didn't. He knew this wasn't victory. Not yet. Over the next few hours, Elian worked. He used his tools to clean parts of the wreck, clearing space around the dragon. He made a shelter with leftover metal sheets, giving the creature shade from the harsh sun. He laid out a soft blanket from his pack, close enough but not too close. The dragon watched him. It didn't attack. It didn't flee. It just watched. When Elian tried to remove the chains, the dragon growled weakly. He stepped back. "Okay," he whispered. "Not yet. I understand." As night came again, something changed. Elian was finishing another fire when he heard it, a low hum. Not from the ship, not from the dragon, from the sky. He looked up. 3 small lights floated above the clouds, silent, smooth, and scanning. Drones. He grabbed his pack and ran to the wreck. "They're looking for you," he said quietly to the dragon, not to help, to finish what they started. The dragon growled again, louder this time. Its body shifted, wings twitched, but it couldn't move fast. Not with the chains, not with the pain. Elian acted quickly. He pulled a dirty tarp over the dragon's glowing body. He scattered hot ash over the ship to mask its scent. Then he lay down in the open, arms behind his head, as if he was just another scavenger sleeping by old wreckage. The drones passed overhead, scanning. One stopped. It hovered. Quiet. Blinking, lights flashing. Elian closed his eyes. Seconds passed. The drone finally moved on. The dragon exhaled sharply. It had held its breath. It had feared. Elian sat up and looked at it. "They're not your friends, are they?" The dragon looked back, and for the first time, Elian saw something more than pain in its eyes. He saw fear. Later that night, rain began to fall. Elian moved closer to the dragon, covering it better with the tarp. Its breathing was rough again. Shivers ran through its body. It looked cold, dying. He made a decision. He stepped forward and placed his hand, slowly, gently, on its neck. The dragon tensed. Its eyes lit up, golden, sharp. Then, it relaxed. It let him touch it. And in that touch, Elian felt it. A strange pulse. A memory. Not his. The dragon's. He saw fire, screams, warships in the sky. He saw the dragon flying, not chained, but wild and beautiful. It had once been free. Then, he saw it captured, tortured, twisted by machines, voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand, and then silence, cut off from everything, left alone, forgotten. Elian stepped back, gasping. "They didn't just hurt you," he whispered. "They broke you." The dragon didn't answer, but it didn't look away either. That night, Elian sat, close, not touching, just present. The dragon slept at last, breathing deeper, and in the darkness of the valley, something quiet and powerful was born. Not friendship, not yet, but trust. The kind that only grows between two souls who know what it means to be left behind. The story written in Scar's morning light crept over the valley, gentle and gold, but nothing about this morning felt peaceful. Elian woke early. The dragon was already awake, lying still beneath the shelter he'd built, breathing slow but steady. Last night had been the first full night it had slept since the crash. Now, it was watching him again, with eyes that didn't just look but studied. Remembering him, not a threat, maybe not yet a friend, but something. After feeding it again, Elian stepped around the dragon's long body, inspecting its wounds. One leg still shook when it moved. Deep scars ran down its side, some fresh, others old. Many were in strange patterns. Elian leaned closer. The patterns weren't just injuries. They were symbols, lines, curves, and cuts, burned into the skin, with precision. They did this on purpose, he thought. Someone marked you like this. He gently ran his fingers near the edge of one of the marks, careful not to touch the raw parts. It shimmered faintly, pulsing with faint energy. Suddenly, the mark lit up. Not bright, just enough for Elian to see. And remember, a flash. He wasn't standing in the valley anymore. He saw a dark room, walls glowing with ancient text. A circle of alien scientists stood around the dragon, their faces hidden behind cold helmets. The dragon was smaller then, younger, chained to the ground, screaming in silent rage. The scientists burned symbols into its skin while strange machines pulsed with energy. This wasn't healing. This was rewriting. This was control. Elian fell, back, gasping. The dragon stirred. It had felt it too. He looked into its eyes and whispered, "They rewrote you. They tried to erase who you were." The dragon's eyes dimmed slightly, as if remembering hurt more than the wounds. That evening, Elian sat across from it, a small fire crackling between them. He pulled out an old metal plate and a carving tool from his bag. As the fire glowed, he began sketching the marks he'd seen. One by one, slowly, carefully, the dragon watched. When Elian finished a symbol, he pointed to it and said softly, "This one." What did they make it mean? There was no voice, but the dragon leaned forward, placed one claw over the mark on the metal plate, and pulsed its skin softly. A memory came, a child screaming behind a metal wall. Another pulse, another symbol, an explosion in space. Silence. A name erased from a ship registry. Another, a creature begging to die, and being told it no longer belonged to any world. Elian's hands shook. You were turned into something they could use. A weapon. The dragon closed its eyes. Elian reached over, touched the edge of one glowing scar, and whispered, "You remember who you were, don't you?" For a moment, the air around them changed. The fire bent sideways. The trees behind them swayed, though no wind blew. The dragon opened its eyes again, brighter this time. Something inside had shifted. Later that night, a shadow moved near the edge of the valley. Elian noticed it first. He stood, his hand on the small scanner in his pocket. Something was approaching, not human, not village-made. It was sleek, silent, and cold. A probe. It floated above the trees, scanning with blue light. The dragon growled softly and tried to stand. Too soon, Elian thought. It's still too weak. He rushed forward, stood between the dragon and the probe, and aimed a signal disruptor he had scavenged years ago. The device sparked, blinked, and died. Damn it, please. The probe locked onto the heat signature behind him. The dragon Elian did the only thing he could. He stepped in front of it, arms wide, unarmed. The probe scanned him. Then, for a strange moment, it stopped, and the dragon did something no one expected. It stood, slowly, painfully, its broken wing dragging behind, its body shaking, but it stood over Elian and growled at the probe. The lights on the probe flickered, the sound changed, and it flew away. Elian fell to his knees in shock. He looked up at the dragon, who stood tall despite its wounds. It looked down at him, not as prey, not as a prisoner, but as someone it had chosen to protect. That night, Elian said quietly, "You remember pain. You remember war. But do you remember peace?" The dragon didn't answer, but it moved closer. It curled around the fire, resting its head near him, and under the stars the once broken creature closed its eyes again. This time, not because it was tired, but because it felt safe. When pain learns to fly, the days passed slowly in the valley, like time itself was, afraid to move too fast. Each sunrise brought new hope and new danger. The wound on the dragon's side had started to close, but the damage ran deeper than flesh. Broken bones, torn muscles, shattered trust. Yet every day it tried. Every day the dragon tried to move. Elian became more than a caretaker. He became a builder, a healer, a quiet teacher. He scavenged from the wrecked ship, pulling out wires, plating, and shattered technology. With trembling hands and tired eyes, he began crafting something no one had ever made before: wing braces for an alien dragon. They weren't perfect, not even close, but they were enough. On the third morning, he stood beside the creature with his invention, a harness made of metal rods, soft padding, and flexible cables. It looked strange. Like armor and medical tech had collided. He looked at the dragon and said softly, "If we're going to leave this valley, you need to fly." The dragon blinked slowly, then lowered its head. "Permission?" Elian worked quickly, adjusting the braces around the ruined wing. The dragon winced but didn't pull away. "I know it hurts," he whispered. "But pain is part of healing too." Once the braces were in place, Elian stepped back. The dragon stood taller now. It flexed the wing slowly. Cables shifted, metal creaked, bones held. Then, it took a step forward, one step, a second, a stumble. But it didn't fall. Elian smiled. "That's it. Again." For hours they trained. Elian set up obstacles made of wood and old ship panels. He guided the dragon with hand signals, moving around the valley like a silent coach. Each time the dragon slipped, it growled, frustrated. Each time, Elian said the same thing. Again. The dragon obeyed. Not because it had to, because it wanted. To that night, as Elian worked on strengthening the braces, he noticed a strange glow on the edge of the wreck. He walked over, expecting to see more damaged tech. Instead, he found a symbol, glowing faintly on the ship's wall, one he hadn't noticed before. He wiped the ash off and stared. A spiral surrounded by wings. His heart skipped. "This isn't just a prison ship," he whispered. "This was a research vessel." He pressed a hand to the symbol. Nothing happened, but the dragon stirred behind him. It looked toward the wall, then back at Elian, and growled softly. A warning. The next morning, while the dragon trained, something moved on the ridge above the valley. Elian saw it, a tall armored figure watching them, silent, distant, deadly. Not a drone, not a scout, a hunter, alien, cloaked, bearing the same spiral symbol burned into the ship. Elian grabbed his scanner. One reading, One target, but powerful, too powerful. The dragon hadn't noticed yet. It was too focused on walking. Elian ran to it. "We're not alone," he said. The dragon lifted its head. Then, the hunter vanished. Gone in a blink. The hunt had begun. That night, Elian couldn't sleep. He kept watch while the dragon rested, its body curled around the fire, but even the flames felt colder now. He spoke into the dark. "They're coming for you. I don't know why yet, but they are." The dragon opened one eye. Elian added, "We need to fly, before it's too late." By morning, the dragon stood at the top of the ridge, looking over the valley. Elian stood beside it, checking the braces, tightening the straps. The wind was strong up here. Beneath them, the wreck looked small. The trees shimmered with morning mist. Elian stepped back. "This is your moment." The dragon took a deep breath. It spread its wings. The left wing, still scarred, trembled. The right wing held strong. It stepped forward, ran, and jumped. For a heartbeat, it fell. Elian's chest tightened. But then, wind caught the wings. The braces held, and the dragon soared. Not high, not far. But it flew. Elian shouted with joy, arms raised. The dragon circled once, then landed with a hard crash, tumbling in the grass. It roared, angry at its failure. But Elian ran to it, laughing. "You did it. You actually flew." The dragon breathed heavily and then let out a low sound. Not a growl, not a roar. A rumble. Deep, strange, Elian realized. It was laughing, but the moment didn't last. A sudden blast hit the ground beside them. Dirt exploded. Elian turned. The hunter was here. It had fired from the shadows. The dragon growled, stepping between Elian and the attacker. But the hunter raised, a device, glowing with the same energy as the dragon's scars. Elian's eyes widened. "They made that for you," the dragon roared, and the hunter replied in a strange, mechanical voice. "You were never meant to heal. You were meant to kill." And, with that, the battle began. But this time the dragon didn't fight alone. The day the hunters came, the first shot had missed. Barely. But the next one wouldn't. Elian dragged the dragon behind the broken ship's hull as the hunter stepped forward, its cloak falling away to reveal a smooth obsidian armor lined with glowing red veins. It wasn't just a soldier. It was built like a ghost, silent, fast, unstoppable, and it wasn't alone. Above the valley, two more hunters uncloaked, dropping from the cliffs like shadows falling from the sky. They landed without a sound, forming a triangle around the crash site. Each carried weapons shaped like forks of lightning. Each one bore the spiral symbol, the same that had once been burned into the dragon's skin. The dragon rose slowly, despite the pain in its body. It had flown once. It had healed a little, but now it would need to fight again before it was ready. Elian could see the doubt in the dragon's eyes. Not fear. Something deeper. Shame. "Don't listen to them," he whispered, placing his hand on its warm side. "You're not what they made you." A voice echoed through the valley. Cold. Inhuman. Full of hate. "You were the final prototype. We gave you strength beyond all others, wings of fire, a heart of fusion. And still you chose weakness." The dragon stepped forward, baring its teeth. Elian stood beside it, unarmed. The lead hunter raised a hand. The other two aimed their weapons. "Step away, human. The creature belongs to us." Elian didn't move. He stared into the hunter's eyeless helmet and replied, "It doesn't belong to anyone." The first shot came fast, aimed not at the dragon, but at Elian. He closed his eyes. But he never felt the impact, because the dragon moved faster than any wounded creature should. Its wing, still wrapped in braces, slammed down like a shield. The blast hit the wing and scattered in a shockwave of sparks. The dragon roared, louder than it ever had before. The sound echoed through the mountains, shaking trees and stirring birds from their nests. The other hunters fired. The dragon leapt, its body glowing, eyes burning gold. The battle had begun. Alien ducked behind the wreck, watching with wide eyes. The dragon tore into one of the hunters, ripping its weapon away with a sweep of its tail. The second hunter jumped and fired from above, but the dragon spun midair, wings catching the blast and flinging it into the trees. It fought like it remembered, not the training they gave it, but something older, something deeper, its true self. But the fight wasn't easy. The lead hunter pulled out a strange device, small, black, covered in runes. He slammed it into the ground. The air pulsed, and the dragon screamed. It fell, wings trembling. Its scars lit up, each symbol glowing red, burning from the inside. The hunters closed in. Alien ran. He didn't think. He just ran to the device and smashed it with a rock. The pulse stopped. The dragon gasped, like coming up from drowning. The lead hunter turned toward Alien, voice colder now. "You break what you do not understand." Alien didn't answer. He just grabbed a metal rod and swung it as the hunter reached for him. It wasn't much, but it was enough to delay him. The dragon rose again. Its eyes weren't gold anymore. They were white-hot fire. It didn't roar. It whispered. Sound like thunder without noise. And then it moved. In one blink it was in front of the second hunter, tearing through armor like it was paper. Silver light burst from its claws. Alien watched in awe. This was not a beast. This was a being of ancient power, a guardian that had been broken, but not destroyed. The last hunter tried to retreat. Too late. The dragon slammed him to the ground with its tail, then lifted him high into the air. For a moment, it stared into his face, then dropped him from the sky. He didn't scream. It was over. The hunters were gone. The valley was silent again, but not like before. This silence was full of breath, of heartbeats of something reborn. Alien collapsed to his knees, exhausted. The dragon walked to him, body still glowing faintly. It lowered its head, touching its snout gently to his shoulder. He looked up, smiling through the pain. "You saved me." The dragon blinked slowly. Then for the first time it spoke, not in words, not with a voice, but in his mind. "No, you saved me first." That night, under the stars, Alien sat by the fire with the dragon curled behind him. They both stared into the flames, not afraid anymore, but something still haunted Alien's thoughts. Why had the hunters come now? Who else knew the dragon had survived? And most of all, what had they created that was even worse than this dragon? If they were willing to give up on their most powerful weapon? What the stars remembered, the valley was no longer quiet. Ashes drifted in the morning wind. The wreck of the old ship still stood, but now its metal bones were soaked with alien blood. The dragon had returned to rest beneath the trees, smoke curling gently from its nostrils. It was wounded again, but this time it wasn't just pain. It was memory. Something deep had been shaken loose during the battle. Alien sat by the fire, wrapping cloth around his bruised ribs. Every part of his body ached, but he didn't complain. He was still alive. Somehow they both were. But they couldn't stay here anymore. Not now. Not after what they'd seen. The dragon rose without a word and walked toward the far side of the valley, the side no one ever touched. Alien followed. There was no question, no need for words. Something was pulling them forward. Through twisted trees and broken stone, they reached a canyon hidden by fog, and there, nestled into the mountain face, stood an ancient temple. Smooth walls, silent steps, no lights, no guards. Only time. Alien's breath caught in his throat. The dragon stepped toward it, trembling, not with fear, but recognition. This was no ordinary place. This was where it began. They crossed the threshold. Inside, the air was heavy with old power. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. Spirals, wings, stars falling from the sky. The dragon's scars pulsed in response, soft, steady, like the temple remembered its child. Elian stepped forward, brushing his fingers across one symbol. It sparked under his touch and sent a wave of light through the floor. The temple woke. Voice, deep, ancient, not male, not female, echoed around them. Blood of the guardian. You have returned. Elian froze. The dragon stared at the central altar where a star-shaped crystal rose from the stone. The voice continued. You were the last, forged to protect, twisted into a weapon, forgotten when the stars fell silent. Elian stepped closer to the altar. What is this place? The voice replied. This is the cradle of the first guardians. Your dragon was never meant for war. It was born to protect the balance, to watch the stars. But its creators grew afraid and changed it. The crystal pulsed. Beams of light reached out, scanning the dragon's body. Its scars burned white, then vanished. Elian gasped. They're gone, he whispered. The dragon stood taller, stronger, lighter, and then it began to change, not its body, its presence. The golden light in its eyes deepened, its breath calmed. The fire beneath its skin no longer burned in pain but in purpose. The voice whispered again. The balance is broken. The stars have gone quiet. The old enemy rises. Elian frowned. What enemy? A new wall opened in. The stone inside was a mural, showing the dragon not as a beast but beside humans, aliens, machines, all standing together against a shadow that blotted out the sky. Something ancient. Something older than war. Something hungry. Elian stepped back, his chest tightening. This is still coming? The voice answered. Yes. The hunters were only the beginning. They were created to silence what could not be controlled. But now, the silence is ending. Suddenly the ground shook, a tremor. Elian looked at the dragon. The crystal cracked. The voice spoke one last time. It sees you. It remembers what was taken. Run and rise. The temple began to collapse. Elian grabbed his bag, but the dragon had already turned. It spread its wings, braces falling away, no longer needed, and roared. It wasn't a sound of pain. It was a call, a warning. They escaped the temple just as the mountain rumbled behind them. Rocks fell. Dust rose. And far above the clouds, something stirred. A shape, too large to understand. Distant, hidden in the upper atmosphere, watching, waiting. Back in the valley, Elian stood beside the dragon. Both were quiet. He looked at the sky, then at the creature beside him. They're not coming to finish what they started. He paused. They're coming because they're afraid of what you're becoming. The dragon didn't reply. It didn't need to. Because in that moment, as the stars above dimmed, Elian knew something no one else in the galaxy did. They hadn't found a broken weapon. They had awakened a guardian and the war hadn't started yet. Healed by a human heart, the sky above the valley was no longer blue. It had turned darker, gray, heavy, alive with something unseen. Stars flickered unnaturally, blinking in and out like a system failing to boot. The wind moved in strange patterns, swirling around the wreckage of the old ship and the crumbled temple far behind. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the kind of silence that came just before a storm that the world had never known. Elian stood at the edge of the cliff, watching the clouds twist. Behind him, the dragon was pacing, its body stronger now, scars gone, wings whole again. The temple had done more than heal it. It had awakened something buried deep in its soul. Not just power, memory, purpose, and fear, not of the enemy, but of what it might become if it gave in to the rage again. A low hum buzzed in Elian's earpiece, the emergency frequency of nearby colonies. Voices, panic, static. Unmarked ship over horizon, mass disruption in communication arrays. They're here. Silence. The ground vibrated under his feet. Elian turned, A shape was descending through the clouds. Not a ship. A shadow. It wasn't flying. It was falling, crashing, stretching like smoke over the land, twisting into claws and wings and eyes that didn't blink. Not one creature. Many, all fused together, old and hungry. It moved like liquid, yet it tore through the air like a weapon. With a mind of its own, this was the old enemy. The reason the stars had gone silent. The reason the dragon had been forged. Elian reached for his blade, not because it would help, but because he refused to stand with empty hands. The dragon stepped beside him, eyes glowing, brighter than ever. White fire pulsed beneath its skin, and the earth shook with every breath it took. But this time, it didn't roar. It looked down at Elian, and in his mind, he heard its voice again. "I'm not ready." Elian looked up, face calm despite the sky falling apart around them. "No one ever is." He placed a hand on the dragon's side. "But you're not alone anymore." The enemy struck. It didn't land. It collapsed into the valley like a wave, of smoke and blades sweeping across the ground with impossible speed. Trees vanished, rocks cracked. Reality itself rippled as the creature twisted and reformed endlessly. But the dragon didn't run. It leapt. Its wings exploded with light, launching it into the air, straight into the heart of the shadow. They collided like thunder. The blast shook the mountains. Fire lit the sky. Elian was thrown backward, tumbling across the ground. But he stood, bleeding and breathless, refusing to look away. Above, the battle was chaos. The dragon fought with a grace and fury that had never been seen before, not even in the legends of old. It moved like a storm with purpose, striking with claws and flame and light pulled from deep inside the earth. But the enemy didn't break. It kept changing, learning, adapting. Every time the dragon landed a blow, it reformed into something worse. Elian saw it. The enemy wasn't fighting the dragon. It was feeding on its rage. And the dragon was beginning to lose control. The fire grew too bright, its eyes too wild, its roar too raw. Elian ran. He climbed the highest ridge, heart pounding, and screamed through the fire and wind, "Stop! You're not a weapon anymore." The dragon froze mid-air. Just for a moment, the enemy struck it hard, sending it crashing to the ground in a ball of light and dust. Elian ran to it, through falling ash, through heat, through pain. He dropped too, his knees beside the dragon, whose breath was now shaky, shallow. "They want you angry," Elian whispered. "They want you to burn everything." He placed his hand on its chest. "But you don't win by being what they made you." He closed his eyes. "You win by being what you chose to become." The dragon's heart pulsed. A deep, soft glow spread through its body. Not the white fire of destruction, but something gentler. Golden. Warm. Powerful in a different way. It opened its eyes, and this time it did not roar. It sang. A sound like the sky exhaling, like light itself remembering its own name, and the enemy screamed. Not in pain, but in fear. The dragon rose again, but not with fury, with peace. Its body shimmered with a soft, radiant light. Its wings spread wide, not to destroy, but to cleanse. It flew, not at the enemy, but above it. The light from its body expanded, touching the clouds, the ground, the stars, and the shadow began to fade. Not from force, but from truth. The enemy twisted, shivered, tried to form one last shape. A weapon, a beast, a scream, but the dragon only whispered one last word into the world, "No," and the darkness broke, like glass. When it was over, the valley was silent again, but it was a new silence. Not empty. Full. The stars returned. The wind was gentle, and the dragon landed beside Elian, folding its wings with quiet dignity. Its eyes were tired, but free. Elian leaned on its side, smiling through broken ribs and dirt-covered skin. "You did it." The dragon looked at him. "No," it replied inside his mind. We did. Months later, stories began to spread across the galaxy. A human and a forgotten dragon, a war that never reached the stars, because two hearts chose to heal instead of destroy. No one ever found the shadow again, because it had been faced and understood. And from that day forward, the stars remembered not the weapon, they remembered the guardian who was saved by a human heart. The end.